Chapter 2: Beginnings. The People's Republic of Iowa stretched up to the Great Lakes and across the ancient Mexican border, from the mile-wide river once called the Mississippi to the broken edge of ex-California's cliff over the Pacific. Iowa was the largest republic left on the continent. Even in the former South America, years of warlord infighting had broken the once wide New Brazil into dozens of small sovereign sultanates. The cataclysmic and subsequent political collapse of the West was felt around the globe. The resulting anarchy led to a far-right swing into fanatical conservatism, which quickly became as extreme as the inevitable wave of ironclad collectivism which followed. Martial law eventually turned into constitutional normalcy through unabated and overreaching security legislation, enacted in a futile attempt to staunch the bleeding of societal control. Totalitarianism spread throughout every facet of life, including the arts. Several large riots in 2070 and 2071, spurred on by the conceptual artist Flange, resulted in the toppling of several local governments, and in one instance, the encasing of a large civic center on Arizona Bay outside Phoenix, in 4 feet of rock-hard bright pink foam. The consequences of this civil disobedience were far-reaching. Creative thought was outlawed. An extreme wave of nationalistic dogma spread to all forms of creative outlet. Any idea which refused to spout these nationalistic tenets as a priority fell quickly out of favor and were eventually forbidden. Wild creativity was now seen as a disease, treated at far-flung hidden government hospitals without windows. As the policy of non-individualism evolved into a ban on all free thought, the governments of most Western countries, in their benevolence, turned to a pharmaceutical dubbed T-Guard to help their populations slough off the disease of creative, non-state-sponsored thought. T-Guard affected the subconscious, focusing its effects on the deep, primal cognitive areas of the brain. One of its major scientific breakthroughs was the total cessation of dreaming, which had been ruled a major symptom of creativity. T-Guard was distributed to the masses in several ways, as an additive in the drinking water and an enrichment of the bread and milk. An aerosol formulation was dropped from huge mylar dirigibles, flying at 1,700 feet above the ground. This method was preferred to end the small outbreaks of dreaming that occasionally popped up in rural areas. Its main delivery system, however, was a once-daily, government-mandated capsule taken before bed. T-Guard was not without its dangers. It had a rocky start, but these days T-Guard psychosis was almost unheard of. Even in those rare cases, not many subjects went into a permanent psychotic state. It happened, of course, especially in the drug's infancy, but now T-Guard was considered risk-free. Still, a baby's first dose of T-Guard, administered as a nasal spray on the newborn's 3rd day of life, was cause of some apprehension for parents, especially after having successfully maneuvered the mountain of red tape and approvals required to conceive a child. These days, as the latest governmental pamphlet proudly claimed, infant mortality rates from T-Guard exposure was no more than 7%, well within legislative benchmarks. Eventually, despite the challenges caused by these new ways of thinking, the human animal did what it has always done: adapt. Chapter 3: Somewhere in Nevada. The Mojave Desert, with its wide expanse of hot, clean land, was officially uninhabited. No supplies went in, and no local government existed. Any custodial duties necessary were orchestrated at a distance from New Cairo's Iowa capital near Lake Erie. Flange headquarters appeared on no map. Its physical location underground could not be seen by the dirigibles. The half-mile of sun-baked sand and rock shielded its inhabitants from the T-Guard and any governmental thought monitoring. It was the home of the free dreamers, Exiled after the artist riots nearly 150 years previous, the man who called himself Flange had begun with a small outpost. When his continuing creativity again became a concern to the state, he retreated, along with his small retinue, going underground. These 25 men and women were now referred to as the Founders. The Free Dreamers evolved from this small beginning to become a thriving hidden population of nearly 17,000 men, women, and children. Although the Free Dreamers' existence was not well known and all but dismissed by governmental agencies as myth, population of dreamers flourished, and with them, new farming, water reclamation, wind harnessing, and synthetic textile production methods. For the most part, the Flange and the Iowan government enjoyed an uneasy standoff. Neither one bothered the other for fear of kicking a sleeping bear. The free dreamer population, unregulated in both thought and growth, had reached a critical mass. Rather than impose population restrictions, thought by the dreamers to be too closely aligned with Iowan dogma, new facilities were excavated. Regardless, supply lines and limitless need continued to grow. Dissent occasionally grew amongst the young members of the community, and popular songs and volumes of literature began to take on a revolutionary bent. Conspiratorial grumbling spread across the population, first on t-shirts and tattoos, and eventually on clan mottos and company mission statements. The leaders of the Flange, knowing that Iowa would never accept a wildly self-aware thinking population of dreamers, got behind the oncoming revolt instead of in front of it. Free thought, dreams, unbridled creation, and personal opinions were now breaking free, threatening to topple a government that for 200 years had fought to suppress them. Flange-sponsored troops, armed with their own free thoughts, began to plan the revolution against their Iowan repressors. Free thought had come of age, and with it, power.